Chris Drury has actually been good at signing free agents away from other teams. We are calling him out for his few misses and also giving his props for his best signings.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1427 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So today, we're going to go ahead, conclude our fun-filled mini-series where we basically analyze Chris Drury's job as general manager for the now 5 seasons that he's been here. Quick disclaimer here. This is part of a series of episodes that we are releasing while I'm away on vacation. Once I get back, we'll dive right back into all the latest happenings with the New York Rangers. But just wanted to do a couple episodes like this that could hold you guys over, some evergreen episodes while I'm away. And today, again, we conclude our Chris Drury series, and we're looking specifically at the free agents that Drury has signed away from other teams. And we're going to start with the bad ones, move our way to the so-so ones, and then some of the better ones that Drury has made as GM of the Rangers. Far and away, the worst free agent signing of the Chris Drury tenure. I don't think there could be any debate. I don't think it's even a point of contention. It is the signing of Patrick Nemeth to a 3-year deal worth $2.5 million per season. And if you can believe this, it actually carried a modified no-trade clause as well. I believe Nemeth could block a trade up to 15 teams for the duration of that contract. Now, some of you might remember an episode a while back when we were doing a different theme of, Drury's job performance, that being Chris Drury's trades. We already talked about Patrick Nemeth, but basically we're getting a 2-for-1 here because the trade of Patrick Nemeth to the Coyotes, that was obviously bad, and the signing was just as bad. The trade, for anybody that needs a recap here, Nemeth was sent to the Coyotes along with 2 second-round draft picks in exchange for Ty Emerson. A salary dump, if ever there was one, and for the life of me, I don't understand why the Rangers didn't just waive Nemeth at that time. But not too long after we ranked Nemeth as the worst trade of the Drury era, we are also going to rank him as the worst free agent signing of the Drury era. Just an incredible feat when you really think about it. For somebody that was here for just 1 season, how many, unfortunate things it caused, basically. And, when you go back to the signing of Nemeth, at the time, I don't remember thinking it was like a disaster signing. I mean, I wasn't doing cartwheels either, but it was kind of like, all right, well, this guy's going to come in here. He'll play on the third pair. It's a reasonable price at $2.5 million. I mean, maybe a little bit steep, and maybe 3 years is a little bit too long. You'd like to get him for a year or two, maybe, but nothing too bad about this signing. And then, unfortunately, we watched him play, and the results just were not good. At the very least, Drury did recognize the problem, and he traded for Justin Braun that year, and Nemeth was a healthy scratch for most of the Rangers' postseason run, the first year under Gerard Gallant. But it obviously did not go well. The signing was terrible. They had to trade him with a bunch of sweeteners attached just to get the Coyotes to take Nemeth off of their hands. And Nemeth ended up playing 1 year with the Coyotes, and then the Coyotes waived him with 1 year left on his contract, which is what the Rangers should have done. But be that as it may, far and away, the worst free agent signing of the Drury tenure. When you look at players that the Rangers have signed from other teams as free agents, honestly, in the Drury era, this is the only true disaster, really, really bad signing when you look at the contract, the length of the contract, and the money on the contract as well. Other than this, there's nothing that was terrible, but we do have a couple others here, a couple other players that I would throw into the bad category. And we're going to begin with one of the more recent ones, and that would be Conor Sheary. 1 year at the minimum of $775K for this one season here. Sheary was in camp on a PTO. It's not a complete disaster because it's literally the shortest contract and the least expensive contract that you can possibly give to someone, but it just hasn't been happening. There's games where I feel like he looks somewhat dangerous, and of course he was with Mike Sullivan back when they were winning the Stanley Cup so many years ago. But Sheary in his first 14 games with the Rangers as of this recording, no goals, 4 assists, and is a -2. And it's one of those situations where just having Sheary on the roster and having him in the lineup every single night, it prevents the possibility, or at least makes it more complicated, the possibility of calling up guys like Gabe Pro or Brett Berard. And it just kind of feels like Shuri right now is just sort of taking up space. I mean, again, I feel like he's played a little bit better than those numbers would suggest, but he hasn't been great either. I mean, we got to be honest here. And, to kind of continue with this theme, there's a couple of players here that we're going to throw into the bad category, but it's kind of a subcategory. These are free agent signings that Drury made that are bad, but also harmless. These are guys that were picked up for basically 1 year at the league minimum, and it didn't really work out, but the Rangers moved on in due time. And of course, you'd like to be able to find some diamonds in the rough when it comes to free agency and get some guys signed for some inexpensive contracts that end up contributing to your team. And the Rangers have done that a couple of times, and we'll get to those players a little bit later in the episode. But these are players that they signed for cheap, and they just weren't very good. Again, not going to crush Drury for these because, 1 year league minimum, what does it really matter? But to kind of run through the gauntlet here, Ryan Carpenter, 1 year at $775K, was here to center the fourth line, just wasn't very good, only played 22 games with the Rangers. You've also got Nick Bonino, 1 year, $800K, didn't make it through the season. I didn't mind this signing when the Rangers did it, based on the length and cost of the contract, but he just really couldn't keep up with the speed of play anymore. Ended up playing in 45 games with the Rangers, which is more than I remembered, but the Rangers did ultimately decide to move on, and I believe there was a mutual contract termination. And I don't know if Bonino is officially retired, but he has not played in the NHL since this season with the Rangers. Tyler Pitlick is another 1 year, $788K, 34 games the 1 year that he was here with the Rangers. He was sort of alternating with Jimmy Vesey at the start of the season, and then Vesey ultimately and rightfully won out. He kind of won that 12th forward job that season with the Rangers. This is kind of interesting, though. Pitlick, since being waived by the Rangers, did not play in the NHL either of the two following seasons, but this season with Minnesota, he's actually gotten into 8 games. So good on him for sticking with it and working his way back to the NHL. But obviously, you can't call that a good signing for the Rangers. Again, harmless because basically the league minimum 1 year, it's fine, but it obviously didn't work out. Craig McKegg, we could throw him into this category too. Just wasn't all that good. He signed back with the Rangers for his second stint in 2021-2022, 43 games, and that was pretty much it. The Rangers made some trades that year, and he was one of the guys that got squeezed out and just never got back into another game. So bad but harmless signing again. And one more here. Honestly, I thought about not even including this player because he only played 7 games with the Rangers, but it was also kind of funny. Jared Tenorti, 1 year at the minimum, 7 games with the Rangers, got waived, got claimed by the Chicago Blackhawks, and that was pretty much that. So nothing too disastrous. Again, the only really, really bad free agent signing from another team. We're not talking about in-house contract extensions. We already covered that in a separate episode. As far as free agent signings from other teams, there was only one that was truly bad, and it was truly horrendous, if we're being honest, and that was Patrick Nemeth. But nothing else here that really crippled the Rangers in terms of, free agent signings that didn't work out for this team. So in just a minute, we're going to keep everything going. We're going to get into some of those middle-of-the-road free agent signings, and then eventually we're going to give Drury props for the good free agent signings, and we will do all of that in just a second. Today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Rugiet. Let's be real, making excuses does not solve anything. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it so easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it is all handled by real doctors. Visit Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL to get 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnNHL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNHL so they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. All right, let's go keep everything rolling on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by moving into that middle tier, those so-so free agent signings by the New York Rangers while Chris Drury has been the general manager. And as a quick, programming note here, we're not going to include guys that were signed to basically fill out the Wolfpack roster. We're already pushing it, including guys like Greg McKegg and Jared Tenorti. So we're not going to worry too much about, the Alex Belziels and the Justin Dowlings of the world. We're going to keep it mostly, obviously, locked in on the Rangers, the NHL team. But for the so-so category, I'm going to put Blake Wheeler here. Thought about putting this into the bad category, but you can kind of trace the line of thinking when it came to to Blake Wheeler with the New York Rangers because he's somebody that had obviously been a very good player in the past and somebody that had been bought out by the Jets, and the Rangers were looking to fill out their roster. And hey, here's a guy that, has been an excellent player in this league. So it's probably worth at least a look, even at his advanced age. He ended up getting 1 year and $800K, but it just didn't work out for the Rangers. He was starting to find his game a little bit. And then he had that horrible injury where his skate stuck in the ice and broke his leg, ended up getting back for one playoff game. And, props to him for doing that. But so at best here, the Blake Wheeler signing. Another so signing. I'm going to put Dryden Hunt here. He's another player that was kind of in that bad category, but we're going to put him in the so-so. Look, he was a hard-nosed player, signed for 2 years at $762K per season, so the price was right. I do feel like he was miscast when the Rangers had him on the Panarin line in the top 6, but as a depth player to round out the lineup, play on the 4th line, I think he did fine. The Rangers ended up waiving him at the start of year 2, but no harm, no foul with the free agent signing of Dryden Hunt. Another so-so player, so-so signing that I'm going to put here, Eric Gustafsson, just 2 years ago, signs for 1 year, $825K. Gustafsson, I didn't realize this until I looked this up, but he was actually 7th on the Rangers in points the one season that he spent here. Got off to a great start. He was excellent when Adam Fox was hurt, quarterbacking the power play unit and whatnot. People were talking about maybe even an extension for Gustafsson. The Rangers didn't do that, and then it kind of faded in the second half, and it wasn't the greatest showing in the playoffs either, but I think overall, it's better having Gustafsson as your 6th defenseman than Patrick Nemeth. I think we can all agree on that. Speaking of another random 1-year defenseman, Ben Harper, he was on a PTO with the Wolfpack, ended up making their team, ended up getting called up to the Rangers, had a role with this team and did okay, was at least a hard-nosed player, did get squeezed out of the lineup for Nico Mikkola, and I do think Mikkola was an upgrade that season, but Harper at 1 year, the league minimum, it's fine. Taylor Radish, so this is obviously a more current one and one that's maybe a little bit more nuanced. 2 years, $1.5 million per season. When this occurred, when Radish was signed, I wasn't really feeling it. I wasn't really even understanding it, if we're being completely honest here. To me, this was just a case of signing a free agent for the sake of signing a free agent. Didn't feel like they really needed to go to 2 years. I mean, if anything, just sign him for 1 year. This is not somebody that you have to have here with any kind of term, I don't think. You look at his career numbers and they're very underwhelming. And I also had the fear that I'm sure a lot of you did as well, that Radish would be one of several Ranger veterans on this team that's taking up a spot and preventing young players from the Hartford Wolfpack from being called up. And there's an element truth to that even now. But look, Radish has outperformed expectations as of this recording. As of this recording, the Rangers have played 14 games, and he is alone in first place with 5 goals on this team. Now, you could very easily make the argument that says more about the Rangers' quote-unquote star players than it does about their depth players right now, and than it does about, Taylor Radish specifically. But be that as it may, I mean, he still leads the Rangers in goals. He had a hat trick against the Sharks. The Rangers got a hat trick from Taylor Radish against the San Jose Sharks, and they lost the game. That's just unbelievable. But, again, so signing for Radish here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is somebody that will outperform expectations, and maybe he'll be a solid Ranger for this year and next year and give us all more than maybe we were expecting. That's certainly possible. This is the one in this middle tier here that came closer to any other than being put in the good category. But for right now, we'll leave it at so-so. But that's it for the so-so ones. There's actually a good amount of good free agent signings by Chris Drury. And a little bit of a spoiler here, I do think this is the aspect of Drury's job where he has been best at. His worst aspect is the in-house contract extension. So it's kind of ironic. When Drury signs a current Ranger to a new contract, it goes poorly. When Drury signs somebody from some other team to a contract, it tends to go pretty well. And we've got some evidence of that we will present in just a second. Today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by talking about the good stuff, the good free agent signings that Chris Drury has made in now his 5th season as Ranger general manager. We're going to start with Vladislav Gavrikov. Now, it's very early in the game here, and he has just gotten to the Rangers, and there's 7 years on his contract, and we don't know how this is all going to play out. But so far, so good. I think this signing has paid dividends. I think the results have been there. I think Gavrikov has basically been as advertised for this team. The contract is for 7 years at $7 million per season. He's got a full no-move clause for the first 5 years of that deal. Then in year 6, he can block a trade to 20 teams. Then in year 7, he can block a trade to 15 teams. And, a lot of us were worried this offseason that, the Rangers and Drury, they were just going to go out and sign a defenseman for the sake of signing a defenseman, and there would be some massive overpayment. I feel like the two most likely candidates that the Rangers were going to target were Gavrikov and maybe Provorov as well. Provorov ended up re-signing, but it ends up being Gavrikov. And I think the price is right here. He got significantly less than Provorov, a player who I think he is at least comparable to. And again, it's kind of hard to grade this one and to rank this one, but this is exactly what we were promised with Gavrikov. Just steady, consistent hockey. Somebody that defends the blue line well, defends the rush well, defends the front of the net. Can chip in a little bit offensively. It's not really his MO, but somebody that's going to be in here, pair him with Adam Fox, be a go-to defenseman for this team. We've seen him obviously take on a major role right from the start here. We've seen 3-on-3 overtimes begin with Gavrikov on the ice. Gavrikov instead of Fox. And usually what they do, or we've at least seen this once or twice so far, if the Rangers lose the faceoff, then Gavrikov stays out there. If they win the faceoff, then he'll go off quickly for Adam Fox. And I think that approach definitely makes sense. But yeah, he's been good. I know that some people, they're not thrilled with the terms of this contract, how long it is, how expensive it is. $7 million a year for Gavrikov, though, that's about the going rate for a defenseman of his caliber going forward. So there's that. And then also, as far as the length, yeah, he's about to be 30, so 7 years is pushing it a little bit. But I do get the feeling the reason they went that long with the contract is to keep the average annual value as manageable, as reasonable as possible. And $7 million a year for Gavrikov is not too bad. Bottom line, Rangers needed a defenseman badly. They badly needed a defenseman. They, in the past year have moved on from Lindgren, from Trouba, and from K'Andre Miller. That's free of your top 4 defensemen for the last handful of seasons. You got to bring in somebody. You got to pony up the dough to bring in a quality defenseman. The Rangers did that. And thus far, again, it's early. It's very early in the game for Gavrikov, but it's been paying dividends thus far. So I do have to put this one for sure in the good category. We move on to Jimmy Vesey. I think this was a good signing. He made the team on a PTO, and we did talk about his contract extension in the contract extension Drury episode, which we put into the middle of the road category. But as far as that initial signing Jimmy Vesey off of a PTO for 1 year at the league minimum, I think it was very, very good. By Vesey's final season, he didn't really have a big role on the Rangers, ended up getting traded. But, you go out and you find somebody like Jimmy Vesey who's been left for dead, and you give him a chance on the PTO and you sign him. I think he outperformed expectations. We weren't even sure he was going to make the team, right? And then he did. And for the first 2 years of the 3 years that he spent here, he had a role. And he was, gritty bottom 6 forward who could play in the top 6 in a pinch. And I think certainly won over Ranger fans while he was here. So, to me, Jimmy Vesey, a good signing. Another good signing, Jonathan Quick. And he has since signed 2 contract extensions. And again, we did discuss the extensions in the contract extension Drury episode. And I think those were good moves for the Rangers as well. But the initial signing might have been the best because they got him for 1 year at just $825K. This is somebody that obviously slam dunk Hall of Famer. We know that. 3-time Stanley Cup champion, the best player on those Kings teams that won the 2 Stanley Cups while he was there. But this is also a guy that I think the rest of the league had kind of given up on, and you just shouldn't do that when it comes to a legend. There have been a lot of examples of that through a lot of different sports over the years. The second you count out, a legendary player who's getting into, his mid to late 30s, that's when they're going to, figure out a way to, reinvent themselves and get back to maybe not their prime, but, something at least somewhat resembling that. So Jonathan Quick is a great signing. He's done a really nice job for the Rangers while he's been here. We've got another goalie signing, and this is the guy that was here right before Jonathan Quick, and that would be Yaroslav Halak. 1 year at $1.5 million. Ended up being his final season in the NHL, the one that he spent with the Rangers, but 272 goals against and a .903 save percentage. It's not sparkling, but it's solid numbers for a backup. So I think that was a good signing as well. Here's one that I love, and I think a lot of people are with me on this one. Sam Carrick for 3 years at $1 million per season. Value versus cost, I think Carrick is pretty high up there as far as Drury's absolute best free agent signings. When he was first brought in, I didn't really get it in terms of giving him 3 years, but the more closely you look at it, the more it kind of makes sense. First of all, again, it goes with the theme that we've been talking about, where you can keep the average annual value as reasonable as possible. But beyond that, if there ever came a situation where the Rangers had to move on from Sam Carrick, they could waive him. And if he claimed waivers, his entire cap hit would be buried in the AHL. So that might have been part of the reason why the Rangers went as many years as they did. But now we're looking at a situation where we're glad that they did that, because we've got Carrick for 3 years signed at a very, very reasonable cost. He's not a superstar. I think we understand that. But he's somebody that I think understands who he is as a player and what he needs to do to help his team win. You know, he'll get in somebody's face if he's going to try to wake up the Rangers if they're sleepwalking through a game. He'll get under somebody's skin a little bit. He'll drop the gloves if the occasion calls for it. He's a good penalty killer. I think he's really embraced that role of being on the fourth line and playing between Adam Edstrom and Matt Rempe, you know, when everybody's healthy. And I think he's done a nice job with that. I've got Carrick right now as the front runner for the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award this season. You know, last year it was won by Will Cooley, and I think rightfully so. I think he was far and away the best pick. But if you wanted to make a case even last year for Carrick, I mean, I certainly would have heard you out. I think he would have been a good choice last year as well. But for this year, yeah, I mean, Carrick so far, he's my pick. He's my choice for that award. He goes out there and he battles every single night. And this was an awesome signing at what turned out to be basically an absolute steal of a price. So we move along now. We got one more here in the good category. It's going to be Vincent Trocheck, 7 years at $5.625 million per season. He's got a full no-move clause for the first 3 seasons, or he did. And now this year, he's got a 12-team no-trade, followed by next year 10 teams, and then the final 2 seasons, 6 teams. Again, absolute steal. I know that last season people kind of got tired of the entire team, including Trocheck, but when you look at what he's done since he's been here, you can't look at this as anything other than a great free agent signing by Chris Drury and the New York Rangers. He's now in his 4th season. As of this recording, 248 games, 73 goals, 128 assists for a total of 201 points, plus 17, 211 block shots, 532 hits. Has twice finished in the top 20 in Selke voting. So he's obviously a great defensive forward. I think we all know that. In the playoffs a couple years ago, absolutely huge, absolutely clutch. 20 points in the 16 games that the Rangers played in the 2024 postseason. That included a game-winning double overtime goal in round 2 against the Canes. And I think Drury also deserves some credit for choosing Trocheck this offseason, because there was a case to be made for Trocheck, and there was also a case to be made for re-signing one of the 2 free agent in-house players that were on the Rangers, the centers that were here. And I'm talking, of course, about Ryan Strome and Andrew Kopp. You know, Strome had been here for a while, had undeniably great chemistry with Artemi Panarin, and maybe was the safest pick out of everybody. Andrew Kopp, you know, he was just a rental that year, but he came over and did a great job, scored way above his, you know, career expectancy, I guess we can call it. And somebody that's a great defensive forward. There was, you know, a little bit of a movement among Ranger fans to try to bring back Andrew Kopp. The Rangers went in a different direction. They went with the something of an unknown. I mean, everybody knew who Vincent Trocheck was by then, but you know what I mean. He had never played for the Rangers, and it's been great. This guy's been a workhorse for this team. Ton of time on the ice, power play time, penalty kill time, you name it. Vincent Trocheck does it for the New York Rangers. A lot of fans, a lot of people listening or watching this wanted Trocheck to be named the next captain. So I think that pretty much says it all. And here's something else to consider. And by no means am I campaigning for the Rangers to trade Trocheck right now, but this contract, how affordable it is, it makes Trocheck a very, very tradable player. If it ever comes down to it for the Rangers, if they ever feel like they have to move on, they have to rebuild, whatever it might be, you should be able to trade Vincent Trocheck and get, you know, pretty solid haul in return for him. And again, I'm not there yet. We're not there yet at this point in the season, but that's something that the Rangers can look at down the road. Now that his once full no-move clause has turned into a limited no-trade clause. But that is just an excellent signing there by Chris Drury. So we'll go to the verdict here, and I think some recapping is in order. For Chris Drury's trades, we gave him a B. For Chris Drury's in-house New York Ranger extensions, you know, contract extensions that he gave to current Rangers, we gave him a C-. For the draft, we gave him a B-. UFA signings, to me, this is his best work. I'm giving him an A-. Again, the only true absolute disaster of a UFA signing from a different team in the Chris Drury era is Patrick Nemeth. Complete mess. And this might be an A. I might give him an A for this, if not for the Patrick Nemeth signing. Like, that's how bad it was. It actually cost him, half of a letter grade. But there have been some great signings, too. I mean, Trocheck is a great signing. Gavrikov is looking really good. I mean, we'll see. There's a ways to go, but so far, so good there. Jonathan Quick was an excellent signing. Sam Carrick was an excellent signing, just to name a few. So for me, you've got a lot of guys that he's brought in that have outperformed their contract, and you got to give him some props for this. We've bashed Drury when he's gotten things wrong. We also got to give him some credit when he gets some things right. So if you take all these grades, again, B for trades, C- for in-house extensions, B- for drafts, A- for UFA signings. If we kind of mix everything together, he's right in that general area of like B or B-, which I think is about right. Feeling a little generous today, we'll give him a B. I feel like he certainly has had some mistakes. And there's other aspects of his job that we didn't, necessarily cover here. If we were going to give him a grade for like player relations, I don't think he can go much higher than probably like a D or a D+ in that situation. But we're looking at things that are, a little bit more tangible than that. We can actually, look at the results and analyze them and try to come up with a letter grade. So for me, overall, I'm giving Drury a B as general manager of the New York Rangers. Some of you might want to go lower. Some of you might even want to go higher, but that's kind of where things stand for me. Try to be as fair as I could through this entire thing. Give him as even and balanced of a trial as I possibly could. But you guys let me know what kind of grade you would give Chris Drury. I'll hear you out on anything unless you say F- or A+. I don't think you can go to either extreme in that, that to that degree. But anything else, you let me know how you're feeling and why you're giving him the grade that you're giving him. But we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.